Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Historian. Come in, settle down. The hour is late, and the world outside is quiet now. Let the sounds of the modern day fade away, and allow your mind to drift back through the centuries, to the flickering lamplight of a Roman evening. Tonight, we are not walking the grand halls of the Senate, nor are we standing on the blood-soaked sands of the Colosseum. Instead, we are seeking out the more intimate spaces, the private halls and dining rooms where the lifeblood of the empire, its merchants and its craftsmen, gathered together. Did you know that these ancient Romans had something remarkably similar to our modern-day unions, social clubs, and professional associations? They called them Collegia, but these were more than just business networks. They were brotherhoods, sworn to a patron god, dedicated to feasting, and committed to burying their own with dignity. The question that lingers in the quiet air of history is a simple one, but profound. Amidst the ledgers and the logistics, the profits and the losses, did Roman merchants actually find joy in their collegia, a genuine sense of belonging and happiness? If you enjoy these late-night journeys into the past, please consider subscribing. It helps our small corner of history grow. For now, though, just relax, and let's travel back together. Imagine a street in Rome, or perhaps in the bustling port city of Ostia. The stone-paved road is lined with shops and workshops, the air thick with the scent of spices, leather, and baking bread. Here, a man named Lucius, a merchant who trades in fine olive oil from Spain, is not just an individual struggling to make his way. He is a member of the Collegium Oularerum, the Guild of Oil Merchants. This membership is a cornerstone of his identity. A collegium, in its simplest form, was a legal association of people with a common interest. There were collegia for almost every profession imaginable. Silversmiths, boatmen on the Tiber, bakers, builders, and even undertakers. But they were not limited to trades. There were also religious collegia, dedicated to the worship of a specific deity, and the famous Collegia Funerititia, or burial societies, whose sole purpose was to ensure that their members received a proper funeral and a marked grave. A matter of immense importance in the Roman worldview. These organizations were not haphazard gatherings. They were structured with a surprising degree of formality, mirroring the Roman state in miniature. A collegium would have its own statutes, its own treasury, and its own elected officials. At the head was the magister or master, often an older, wealthier member who presided over meetings and feasts for a term, typically a year. He was assisted by treasurers, called quaestors, who managed the members' dues and the collegium's assets. They had secretaries or scribi to keep records, and a meeting hall, the scola, which served as their headquarters. This hall was their sanctuary, a private space away from the chaos of the forum and the docks. It was here that they conducted their business, yes, but it was also where they built their community. The rules were written down, inscribed on stone or bronze for all to see. Rules about dues, about behavior at meetings, and about the responsibilities of each member to the group. This structure provided order and predictability in a world that could often feel chaotic and uncertain. At its core, the collegium was an economic necessity. For a merchant like our Lucius, trading across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean was a risky venture. Storms could sink ships, pirates could seize cargo, and bandits could raid caravans. To face these perils alone was daunting. The collegium offered a shield of collective security. Members could pool their resources to charter entire ships, reducing the cost and risk for each individual. They could establish warehouses in distant ports, managed by trusted fellow members. In some cases, they acted as a rudimentary form of insurance. If a member's shipment was lost at sea, the collegium might have a fund to help cover a portion of the loss, preventing a single disaster from bankrupting a family. This economic function cannot be overstated. It was the practical, logical foundation upon which everything else was built. Without this shared commercial interest, the social bonds might never have had the chance to form. It was the pursuit of profit that brought these men together, but it was not the only thing that kept them there. Let us follow the scent of salt and see to the bustling port of Ostia, the gateway to Rome. The docks are a symphony of organized chaos. Cranes groan as they lift heavy amphorae filled with wine and oil from the holds of broad-beamed merchant ships. Men from every corner of the known world shout in a dozen different languages. Here, the power of the Collegia is on full display. The shipwrights, the dockworkers, the grain measurers, each has their own association. Our oil merchant, Lucius, would meet with his fellows from the Collegium Olarium in their schola near the warehouses. Here they would share vital information: which shipping lanes were safest, which captains were most reliable, what prices were being offered in the markets of Gaul or Egypt. They could engage in collective bargaining, not with an employer, but with the ship owners and the state officials who managed the grain supply. By presenting a united front, they had a voice. They could lobby for better docking facilities or protest unfair taxes. An individual merchant was a whisper in the wind. A collegium was a voice that magistrates had to hear. Beyond logistics and lobbying, the Collegia played a crucial role in maintaining trust, the invisible currency upon which all trade depends. In a world without international regulatory bodies or standardized contracts, reputation was everything. The Collegium served as a guarantor of quality. A baker belonging to the Collegium Pistorum was expected to produce bread of a certain standard. A silversmith in his guild was expected to use pure metal. Membership signaled to the public that this was a craftsman or merchant who abided by the rules and standards of his peers. If a member were to cheat a customer or sell shoddy goods, he would not only damage his own name, but also the reputation of the entire Collegium. The consequences could be severe: fines, public shaming, or even expulsion. This system of self-regulation was vital for the smooth functioning of the Roman economy. It created a network of trust, allowing a buyer in Rome to purchase goods from a producer in Ephesus with a degree of confidence, knowing that the seller was part of a respected association that valued its collective honor. But to see the Collegia as purely economic entities is to see only a fraction of the picture. It is to look at a skeleton and ignore the flesh and blood, the life and laughter that gave it meaning. The Romans, for all their pragmatism, understood the deep human need for community. The business conducted in the schola was often just the prelude to the main event: the shared meal, the communal feast. These were not simple, quiet dinners. They were the vibrant, beating heart of the Collegium. Let us imagine the scene. The main hall of the schola is filled with long dining couches. The air, once filled with talk of shipping rates and market prices, is now thick with the aroma of roasting meat, garlic, herbs, and warm bread. The flickering oil lamps cast a warm, golden glow on the faces of the members, their workaday anxieties melting away as the wine begins to flow. These banquets, or ceni, were meticulously planned and funded by the members' dues or by the generosity of a wealthy patron, perhaps the year's magister. Inscriptions found across the empire tell us about these gatherings. They list the menu. Perhaps some pork, chicken, fresh fish, and always an abundance of seasonal vegetables and fruits. And the wine was essential. It was passed around in clay cups, loosening tongues and fostering a spirit of camaraderie. Here, a junior member might find himself reclining next to a senior merchant, a man he would normally only address with formal deference. But at the banquet table, some of the usual hierarchies were softened. They would share jokes, tell stories of their travels, complain about their wives or the tax collector, and toast to the health of the emperor and the prosperity of their collegium. This was where business associates became friends, where a loose network of merchants transformed into a brotherhood. The joy was palpable. It was in the shared laughter, the full bellies, and the simple human pleasure of breaking bread together. This sense of brotherhood was deepened by another, more profound element: shared religion. Every collegium had a patron deity, a divine protector who watched over their specific trade. For merchants, it was often Mercury, the swift-footed messenger of the gods, the patron of commerce and travelers. For builders, it might be Minerva, goddess of wisdom and craft. The Schola of the Collegium was not just a meeting hall and a dining room, it was also a shrine. In a prominent niche, there would be a statue or an altar dedicated to their patron god. Before any important meeting or feast, a small sacrifice or offering would be made. A prayer would be said, a libation of wine poured. This was more than mere superstition. It was a powerful bonding agent. It meant that their association was not just a human contrivance for making money. It was a sacred community, sanctioned and protected by the gods. Their shared work was elevated, given a divine significance. When they prayed together to Mercury for safe travels and profitable ventures, they were affirming their common identity and their reliance on one another and on a power greater than themselves. These religious observances were woven into the calendar of the Collegium. They would celebrate the festival day of their patron god with special reverence, often with a more elaborate banquet and public procession. They honored the genius or guardian spirit of the Collegium itself and made offerings to the deified emperors, a gesture of loyalty to the state. These rituals provided a rhythm to the year, a series of shared experiences that reinforced their collective identity. In a vast and often impersonal empire, where a person could feel like a tiny, insignificant cog in a giant machine, the Collegium offered a spiritual home. It was a place where a man was known, where his presence mattered, and where he participated in sacred rites that connected him to his peers, his profession, and the divine order of the cosmos. This spiritual dimension provided a deep, quiet joy, a sense of meaning and purpose that transcended the daily grind of the marketplace. It affirmed that their work, their lives, and their fellowship had a place in the grand scheme of things. This search for a place, for an identity, was a powerful motivator for joining a collegium. Imagine a young man who has just moved to Rome from a small town in Gaul. The city is a sprawling, overwhelming metropolis of 1 million people. He knows no one. He is anonymous, a face in the crowd. But by joining the collegium of fellow Gallic merchants or the guild of the trade he practices, he instantly gains a community. He is no longer just a solitary immigrant. He is a member of a recognized group. He has a place to go, people to talk to who understand his background and his business. The scholar becomes his anchor in the swirling sea of the city. Membership conferred a tangible identity. Members might wear a special ring or pin, a subtle signifier to others in the know. Their collegium's name would be inscribed on public monuments they helped to fund, a permanent testament to their collective presence and civic pride. This was a source of immense satisfaction. It was a way of saying, I am here, I belong. We, together, are a part of this great city. Within the collegium itself, there was another layer of identity and status. The miniature republic of the guild offered its own ladder of prestige. While Roman society as a whole could be rigidly stratified, the collegium was a space where a man of humble birth, through hard work and good standing among his peers, could rise to a position of honor. To be elected magister for a year was a great achievement. It meant you had earned the respect and trust of your fellow members. The magister had the honor of presiding over the feasts. His name would be mentioned in inscriptions, and he would be responsible for representing the collegium in public. This pursuit of honor or dignitas was a driving force in Roman male culture. The collegium provided an accessible arena for its attainment. Even for those who never became master, simply being a member in good standing, contributing to the feasts and the treasury, was a source of pride. It demonstrated that you were a successful, respectable part of the professional community. This internal economy of honor and status was a powerful social glue, providing a joy that was tied to recognition and self-worth. Life, however, is not all banquets and honors. The Roman world was a place of sudden hardship. Disease could strike without warning, a business venture could fail, and death was an ever-present reality. Here, the Collegium showed its most compassionate face. It functioned as a vital social safety net in an era with no state-sponsored welfare. If a member fell on hard times, his fellows might discreetly offer a loan from the treasury to help him get back on his feet. If he fell ill, members might visit, bringing food and ensuring his family was cared for. These were not legally mandated obligations. They were the unspoken duties of fellowship, born from the bonds forged over shared meals and shared prayers. Inscriptions sometimes mention a collegium helping the widow or children of a deceased member, perhaps providing a small pension or helping to set the sons up in the family trade. This mutual support was a profound source of comfort. It was the knowledge that you were not alone, that if disaster struck, there was a group of brothers who would have your back. This security, this freedom from the terror of facing misfortune alone, was surely a deep and abiding form of joy. And then there was the final, universal hardship, death itself. For the Romans, a proper burial was not a trivial matter. It was a sacred duty, essential for the peace of the soul in the afterlife. To be left unburied or cast into a common pit was a fate of unimaginable horror. Yet, a proper funeral, a tomb, and a memorial inscription were expensive, often beyond the means of an ordinary merchant or craftsman. This is where the Collegia, particularly the dedicated burial societies, played their most crucial role. Upon joining, a member paid an initiation fee and then regular dues, which went into a fund. When that member died, the Collegium took over. They would pay for the funeral rites, hire professional mourners, and ensure a respectful procession. Most importantly, they would provide a final resting place, often in a large, shared tomb called a columbarium, which was filled with small niches to hold the funerary urns of the members. The Collegium would guarantee that your name was inscribed, that you would be remembered. They would even gather at the tomb on special memorial days to share a ritual meal in honor of their departed brothers. This promise of a dignified end, of not being forgotten, was perhaps the greatest comfort the Collegium could offer. It was a joy born of profound peace of mind. Of course, we must not romanticize these associations. Human nature is complex, and any group of people will have its share of friction and conflict. The Collegia were not immune to internal politics. The election for magister could be a source of intense rivalry, with factions forming and arguments breaking out. Ambitious members might vie for influence, leading to jealousy and resentment. Inscriptions sometimes hint at disputes over the management of the treasury or disagreements about the proper use of funds. Was a proposed banquet too extravagant? Was a certain member not paying his fair share? These were communities of real people, with all their flaws and ambitions. The warm glow of fellowship could sometimes be chilled by the cold winds of personal conflict. The joy of belonging was likely punctuated by moments of intense frustration with one's peers. It was a family, and like any family, it was not always perfectly harmonious. Furthermore, membership was not without its burdens. Belonging to a collegium came with a price tag. There were initiation fees and regular dues to be paid. Members were often expected to make extra contributions for special feasts, the renovation of the scola, or the commissioning of a new statue for a patron. For a wealthy merchant, these costs were trivial, a small price to pay for the status and benefits of membership. But for a less prosperous member, a craftsman just getting by, these financial obligations could be a significant strain. The pressure to keep up, to contribute alongside wealthier members, could be a source of anxiety rather than joy. Failure to pay one's dues could lead to fines or even the humiliation of being struck from the membership list. The community that offered so much support also made demands, and the weight of those demands could sometimes feel heavy. There was also a shadow that loomed over the Collegia from the outside, the watchful and often suspicious eye of the Roman state. The emperors and the Senate were deeply wary of any organized group that could potentially become a locus of dissent or political unrest. A gathering of men, meeting in private, swearing oaths to one another. It had the potential for conspiracy. Throughout Roman history, there were periods when the Collegia were suppressed or outright banned. Julius Caesar dissolved most of them, fearing their use by his political rivals. Later emperors like Trajan were extremely cautious about granting permission for the formation of new ones. A collegium had to be officially sanctioned by the state to be considered legal. This meant that their very existence was often precarious, dependent on the whim of the current emperor or local governor. This constant threat of official disapproval must have tempered their activities, forcing them to be publicly ostentatious in their loyalty to the emperor in order to avoid suspicion. The freedom they enjoyed within their own walls was always conditional. So we return to our quiet, lamplit question: did Roman merchants find joy in their collegia? The answer, like history itself, is not simple. It is a mosaic of light and shadow. The collegia were born from practical necessity, from the cold calculus of risk and reward in the world of commerce. But they grew into something far more human. They were places of boisterous celebration, of shared food and wine, of laughter that echoed in the rafters. They were sanctuaries of shared faith, where men found a common purpose under the gaze of a patron god. They were anchors of identity in a sprawling, anonymous world, offering status, honor, and a place to belong. And perhaps most importantly, they were networks of care, a promise that no member would face hardship or death alone. The joy was not a constant, perfect state. It was tempered by internal rivalries, financial burdens, and the ever-present scrutiny of the state. But the evidence of thousands of inscriptions, of the lovingly decorated meeting halls, and of the carefully tended tombs all point to one conclusion. The joy was real. It was the complex, deeply human joy of finding a family. Not of blood, but of choice. A family forged in the marketplace, bonded at the banquet table, and faithful even unto the grave. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of the Roman Collegia. I hope it has given you a small sense of the rich social tapestry that lay just beneath the surface of the great empire. May your own communities bring you comfort and fellowship, and may your rest be deep and peaceful. Good night.